Welcome to The Business of Engineering, the new podcast from Element 14, the world's largest online community for makers, engineers and tech professionals. In this series, we're talking to entrepreneurs and business leaders about some of the challenges and opportunities involved with working in the tech sector. I'm John Lucas, and I'm happy to be joined today by Chris Burgess, CEO of Barneybots, Natasha Bob Evans, Regional Entrepreneur Director at NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator, and Gareth Gadd, Chief Business Development Officer at Compliance Compendium.
Yeah, hi. So Chris Burgess, CEO of Barneybots. We're an SME that provides smart toy robotic kits to the consumer market.
My name is Gareth Gadd, and I'm Chief Business Development Officer at Compliance Compendium. We offer a software as a service solution for GDPR, which everybody likes to hear about these days. And we aim totally at the SME and charitable sector because they're the ones that need the most protection and have the least skills.
I'm Natasha Bob Evans, Regional Entrepreneur Director for the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator. We house entrepreneurs we have had nearly 5,000 entrepreneurs come through our doors across the UK. I help support and manage the accelerator hubs in the north, which includes Newcastle, Manchester and Leeds. We have a huge variety of entrepreneurs, and we're here to basically support them start, scale and succeed.
So Chris, I'll start with you as our kind of business leader in this around the table. How many products has Barneybots taken to the market at this point?
So we started in the education sector and had a couple of robot kits, a remote control car, robot arms, things like that we were providing. And off the back of that, thought let's get something into a retail sector, kind of challenges in the education in terms of when everyone goes on holiday, business kind of stops, and we wanted to kind of get over that. And so we launched a cardboard to code range, Christmas 2016, which is Barneybots. It's a flat pack cardboard robots. And then in January of this year, we launched a new a plastic and metal construction called Planet Totem. And there's another 3 SKUs that we launched there. So,
and how long would you say it took between the first decision to go into the commercial sector and actually getting those products onto the shelves or out to?
It takes a bit of time. I think depending on how we've innovated and done the products, it's not been so much market-led in as much as we've not gone out to people and said, what products do you guys want? We've instead looked at what the market was doing, and we started, as I say, in an education base where we were providing robotics to teachers to try and get children coding, trying to get them understanding STEM, which is a crucial thing that's happening at the moment, not just in the UK but all over the world. And then kind of from that saying, look, these kits are really good at getting children into that. They're good at teaching teachers and adults, so what we consider not so much the older generation but people that don't have as much of an aptitude for this kind of technology into the marketplace, to say, well, now we need to figure out how do we package that up into something that goes into a retail sector. Because stuff that you sell to schools, at the time we were putting kits in plastic bags. They didn't look very pretty, but they were functional, and that's the important thing. But in the retail sector, you want something that looks really, really nice and everything else, pretty on a shelf, as well as it has that value that you can get just by looking at it. You know that it's a bit more valuable because parents spending money, it's a different kind of ball game. So from schools where we'd launch in January 14 to when we first launched the cardboard versions into the Christmas 2016, it's a couple of years, a long period of time where you're not just developing the product, but you're developing the packaging, what's the marketing going to look like, and that kind of thing as well.
Mm-hmm. And to step back a little bit, how did Barneybots actually start in the first place for you?
So Barneybots is a company owned by CBIS, CB Info Systems. We were developing solutions for all sorts of business size, mobile websites, applications, databases, kind of bread and butter stuff at the time from 2004, a long period. Then in 2007, 2008, we got involved in a military project for IED and sniper detection, which was all about saving lives. Soldiers in Afghan, lots of IEDs were being placed at the time. We took part in the MOD Grand Challenge and built some robots, and a teacher had seen us around about 2012 actually, some archive footage talking about the robots that we'd built. A teacher of a secondary school in Leeds, and said, can you come in and talk to the children about robots, and can you bring some of the robots with you? And I said, well, no, can't bring those into school, I'd get in a lot of trouble for that. So what I can do though is I'll build you a couple of robots that we can use. They had 60 13, 14-year-old lads that wanted to get involved. So we built a remote control car and a robot arm, very tacky at the time. We were talking, bits and pieces of Amazon, bits and pieces from Farnell, just trying to scrap together, and cost us about £600. We went into the school, and for 2 hours the children are absolutely hooked. They were really engaged. We'd never heard engagement. What is engagement? You know, we're used to business terms. And it meant that they were completely engaged in what we were doing, excited about what we were doing, and they were learning stuff. So off the back of that, the teacher said, look, can I have those robots? So sure, take those. Moved on, went back to work, to the day job sort of thing, and got an email the next day from another teacher. He'd been in the pub the night before with his friends saying, you should have seen the kids' faces. And off the back of that, we got a call. So can you give us some of those robots? Well, okay, I'll build some, but there's a cost to it. We'll charge you cost. 2 days later, 2 more emails. We say, okay, this is interesting. I want to do something here. So we started building into the education sector from 2012 to 2014, launched into the education sector. But that hunger for wanting to do more, and also seeing the effect it had on the children, having a kind of goal to try and get as many people like this into kind of coding and robotics, and also what we did with the military in terms of where do we get those resources from, engineers, computer scientists, coders. There weren't any around. We were trying agencies in Poland, Russia, outsourcing to China, to get the best coders, get best engineers. In the UK, we were struggling to find electrical engineers and stuff like that. So as part of that overall thing, saying, let's get out to the world and kind of build on this, get more people in, we went out to the retail market as well.
Okay. And what's kind of this might seem like an obvious question, but what distinction is there between selling to educators and then taking out to what you would describe as the commercial market? Is it just in terms of audience or how you're actually marketing it?
Across the board. So our target is, and we have a what we call a massive impact statement that everyone in my business kind of goes to, from the workshop guys up to the biz dev guys, and that's to engage and inspire every child in the world to learn about robotics and STEM using our technology. And so for us, trying to say go out there and build to that. In the education sector, the challenge is the teacher. Not that they don't want to do it, and not that they're not capable of doing it, but there's a fear factor around this technology where I went to a workshop with a group of primary school teachers, and I had our robot kits in the early days, and I said, there you go, we're going to do robots. And one of them said, look, I can see you've got tea and coffee and biscuits there. I'm going to have that. But if it's all right with you, I'm going to sit back. This stuff is way over my head. So we had to kind of encourage, you can have a cup of tea and biscuit, but you've got to touch the tech. Let's get involved. When they got into it, they really enjoyed the technology, and they went away and they were coding and building robots. And that was amazing for us. We started to understand, get through the teachers. Once they've embraced it and realised, actually, it's not that hard, then they'd like to do it more. The children are the ones that we thought would be selling the robots for. It's the teachers that really embraced it. So moving that across into a retail sector, we know that the children, if you put in front, and I've got a 6 and an 8-year-old, if I put any technology in front of them, they're away. Nephew is 14. If I give him technology, off he goes and he uses it. So it's really saying to the parents, this isn't as scary as it might look before. So there was real challenges, as I said before, in terms of plastic bag packaging, where we might sell to the teacher or get across the fact that it's not scary. There's loads of curriculum support with this, and there's loads of training resources, or CPD, continuing professional development. In the retail sector, it's saying to the parents, there's activities for your children to do. Please take a seat with your child and give it a try, and there's videos online and workshops to help you, and the packaging is geared towards something that's a lot prettier and kind of inviting and not scary at all.
So what kind of preparations did you have to make before you did kind of take it out to retail?
Really, the good thing about starting the education sector before launching to retail is that they were our market test, if you like. They were the teachers as well as the children, getting parents involved at workshops. It was a way for us to validate what we were offering to the market. So there was a lot of market research done in terms of, does this product work? Are the activities good enough? Is it easy to put together? Is it robust enough to last? Because if a class of 30 children can pull it apart and it still works the next week, then we're good to go out to the audience, so to speak. And then after that is really just trying to get out and do workshops. So more, obviously, understanding the manufacturing, improving all of that came later, actually. You've got a product, you've got the prototypes, it works. You do a low run on it, you get out to the market, see what comes back. Once it got out there, we then had to improve and get better.
Gareth and Natasha, is that something that rings true to you too when you're advising a company that's taking a particular tech product onto the market? Would you say that's generally the case, that it kind of starts small and then build it up rather than...
Yeah, but there's a few other factors though, really. I think what Chris is describing was really a kind of a new product, new market type thing. So if you take the Ansoff type grid, you've got new products, existing products, or you've got new market, existing market, and the most difficult ones are obviously the new market, new product things. The other one, which I've noticed quite a lot when I was in IBM, I used to advise our Hursley lab. So the Hursley lab would come along and say, we've got this great shiny new piece of tech, or we've got this software idea. How do we take it to market? So the first thing is well, what is the market? And so you have to try and understand what the market is and what the current competition is. If it's a brand new market and a brand new product, then you have to kind of look at, is there something that I can model that has a similar behaviour to this in the marketplace? Coupled with that is the place in the economic cycle. So it's one of the questions you'd asked before this to kind of get us thinking was along the lines of, when's the right time to sell something? And that depends on whether it's a differentiating product. So this is going to the Porter's type thing again, the Michael Porter model. So is it a differentiating product or is it a cost-focused product? A differentiating product, the best time to insert into a market is in the growth phase in the economy. If you've got a cost-focusing product, the very, very best time is to insert that into the market when the market's receding. Everything can be successful at any point in the cycle. You just got to pick the right product for the right part of the cycle.
I would echo that, and it was really interesting hearing Chris's journey because it's very similar to a lot of the entrepreneurs that we work with. The key thing is, who is your target audience? So it's interesting, Chris's journey around understanding that it's actually the teachers and the parents. So we very much get our entrepreneurs to really think about who is that target audience. And then actually the big question which is, what is the problem that you're actually trying to solve? So taking it back to real basics. Once you can understand who that target market is and what that problem is that you are, or pain point that you are trying to solve, then actually that you can reach your target audience. But you need to do those two big factors. You need to really understand them first.
Mm-hmm. And how would you guys advise a tech startup to kind of do that research to kind of identify those key questions?
Well, actually pilots, and this is it. And actually this is exactly what Chris did. He actually trialled it within a school and then was able to pivot and decide which areas worked well and which don't. So actually doing the doing is the key thing. Actually testing it before you even think about launching it.
A lot of businesses have what's called the minimum viable products. And so with software, that's a very key thing. You can't just go out and build the whole thing. You've got to have an MVP. Two big things, especially in the software market, are the length of time that you take to build the product. If it's too long, it's going to fail. So you have to modularize your development. So in order to modularize, you need a plan. So it sounds very boring, but you've got to start with a plan. So you can do all the things on the economics, you can do all of the market sizing and all that sort of stuff. Once you've got a product, and the product will change when it hits the marketplace, exactly as Natasha says, you'll develop and then change and develop and change. That's just a circumstance of what happens in the marketplace. Your product can't stay still, it has to be dynamic. There will be new models, new additions, that sort of thing. So you need a plan.
And that interesting question that Gareth raised, when is the right time to launch? That is very, very difficult for entrepreneurs to work out. But what we've found is that actually it's where the product is finally doing what you need it to do. So if it does the core aspects that you actually need it to be, that's the first good step and sign. The second one is, do you have the ability to deliver it? So if you do get that demand that you need or you want, then actually do you have the team, the infrastructure, the support behind it that allows you to deliver it?
And Chris, how did you know that the time was right for you to?
Yeah, because in terms of can you deliver it, actually, just that most recent comment is an interesting one, because with our second product launch, when we launched it, we had an opportunity to go to Eureka Park in Las Vegas at CES, and to get there was a challenge. But also, when we finally knew we were going, we weren't ready to get this out in the market at all. We had prototypes that were working, we knew what we needed to achieve, but there were so many things. And as a small business, you don't have millions of pounds sat around that you can go, right, well, we'll do a run of 1,000 of these fully built. You have to take risks on certain timescales to say, well, we know it might take 8 weeks to get a board ready, like a PCB, a circuit board ready. The rest of it's ready in 2 weeks. So what do we sacrifice? And, at what point do we actually say, now we're going to order for a run? Otherwise you're doing pre-orders, and pre-orders are never great because people want to feel it and use it and play with it. So it was quite interesting that when we went to CS, we knew that it was going to be a set time. So I think managing customers' expectations, if you're going to go out there and sell it and say, look, this isn't ready yet, but it's going to be ready, and when it is, it's amazing. So emotionally, be the first to get it, but it's going to be at least July, and that's not a guarantee, because what if something happens? Stuff has happened as we've gone along. we finally got the stuff out in August. And also, as I say, small business lack of cash flow, trying to say, oh, well, I want 20,000 of those because we sell them. You don't know how many you're going to sell of a new product launch. So all the signs were good, but I'm happy to say we took 6,000 as a first order, which we finally ordered in February after we'd been to the CES show, and they all went within a week. We'd pre-orders on those, and so I was saying to the guys, well, we should have just gone for 20,000, but if we'd done 20,000 and only sold 1,000, I'd be saying, oh, well, we've really made a mistake here, guys. So it's almost about trying to balance the risk on what's going to happen and what we confidently be able to shift. But I think when we launched the cardboard stuff, it was a Christmas launch, 2 weeks before Christmas. And even though that was late in the day, we took a risk. We actually managed to put 400 cardboard units together in a retail packaging. We ordered a few more, but that was as quick as we could get from the various different suppliers of like cardboard boxes, instruction books and whatever else, to get it to a point that we get it out there. And we did shift them all by Christmas. And we didn't do that as this is a launch of the product, let's go. That was literally a pilot launch to say, it's Christmas. We were hedging our bets to say this is actually, although it's an education product, it's also fourth quarter toy time. Loads of people have probably already bought their Christmas presents. So how are we going to be able to kind of get it out and see it worked? And really it was social, Facebook, Twitter adverts. So it cost us. As a pilot launch, trying to pick the right time and knowing that we were going to put the money into the social pipeline to try and get some of the kits sold so people could try it and go, yeah, we loved it, hated it, whatever, and get that crucial feedback. We knew we weren't going to make any money either. On this product, we did it in such a fashion that it cost us more to advertise to shift the units than it did to sell the units. And we made the decision that we were going to do that, knowing that it was going to cost us, loss lead, if you like, to get it out there, to get that crucial feedback for the first time from the market. It went really well. I think, the whole new market, new product, yeah, we were experiencing that and building a market again without that vast cash or, over the years and up until now, there's been minimal staff. I don't have a team of 10 guys in biz dev or 10 people in sales and marketing. We've got those divisions now in the business, but in the early days when we launched in 2016, there was sort of me pushing it, and I'm innovative. I want to build the next product and bounce around. So having to flip from being the person that says, yeah, but I want to build this is really cool, and the market says this, we're going to build this, to saying, well, hold up, we've got this much cash, we need to launch according to a plan and a strategy. You have to kind of change who you are as a person from kind of going crazy and it not working to being quite restricted and saying, right, now what's going to happen, and waiting that period of time to get the results before making the next decision to what you do with the product. With a cardboard one, what's nice is although we're building this market and we understand who we're selling to, but there's that barrier there in terms of what we need to say to them. But there's the market for cardboard toys wasn't there in 2016. And then recently, our product, Barneybots Cardboard to Code, we've just had recently seen Nintendo have launched a Labo kit, 10 times more expensive than ours. But I kept getting text messages throughout the night from people, someone on the board, director, friends saying, have you seen Nintendo? They're competitors, is this bad? And I was like, thank God. These guys have got 100 million to put into market. Go ahead and build it, and we'll jump on the back of that and say, we've got a product that looks just like this. We were out first, and actually it's a lot cheaper. So please, go Nintendo, go. That's a really good news. So all of these things, kind of, when's the perfect time? I think you just, as you've said, Natasha, is kind of strategically look at, in terms of what your supplier is going to be able to do for you for when you're going to be able to launch, in terms of the minimal viable product. That's completely right. We looked at what would actually work in terms of give us the results of build a robot, design a robot and bring it to life. But was it the end product? No. Since then we've revised the instructions, we've revised the added value kind of activities that go with it and some of the bits that go in the box to make it better. But we needed to get out there and see what the market was going to come back.
The amazing thing is with entrepreneurs like Chris is that actually they've been able to be agile. And I think what you find with big organisations that this concept of sunk costs, where actually they go in one direction and have to continue or feel that they have to continue. But what's amazing to see and what I get constantly inspired by is the fact that actually you can pivot, you can change, you can respond really quickly to what you see as working well. And so that's the beauty of entrepreneurs and launching a product in this way for me.
And I think pivoting without looking like a madman to the board is always quite nice as well. When you make a decision to go a completely different direction or from education into retail, the logic behind it, as far as we could see, was sound, with the troughs that you would find in terms of revenue income from when everyone goes on holiday. It's Christmas and you phone up your customer and they're not there, literally zero, to where we were saying, well, actually in a retail market where we're going to be able to, from our massive impact statement, trying to get more children involved, great, it's a big tick in the box there, get our brand recognised as what it is, as something very good for code and robotics, but also that revenue stream, that continual revenue stream. So what we found is that from a retail point of view, when the parents are off on holiday or the teachers are not at work, the parents are looking for things for the children to do. So it kind of balanced out nicely for us. It meant we didn't have a break because we were constant, but it was also good from a business perspective as well.
I'd like to go back to the point you raised earlier, which I hear a lot about, which is weighing up that risk in terms of how much product to order to manufacture in the hopes of selling in that first, kind of say your first quarter or your first year, etc. I mean, Chris, you said it was literally kind of almost like a risk you landed on. Did you say 6,000 or?
Yeah, we said we went for 6,000, which at the time of 3 SKUs, and so the totem kits are what we call they're animals. So we have a spider, a tortoise, and a crab that you build yourself from parts. Again, may it sound a little bit crazy, but when you see it, it's awesome. And trying to say, right, we'll take 2,000 of each. So in our mind, based on the volumes that we've done with the cardboard product, the fact that the totem range is like we go by a skills trajectory, so it's the next level up, and so it kind of rationale into that to say I think that's a good risk, but taking into account all of the information that we could, and still taking a gamble and saying, is this the right sort of number that we can deliver on, that's going to do enough? Because if we didn't do enough as well, if we only did a few hundred units, we'd be forgotten about by the time we got the next load through as well. So it's trying to balance the whole thing off, to be honest.
From your guys' perspective, is that always just a case of taking a slight risk, or are there methods you can take to kind of mitigate that and kind of get an idea of what is the correct volume to start to launch with when you do first go to the market?
There does need to be some analysis around why you've come to that figure, but I think one of the key things is actually expectations of your customers. So you touched on it, Chris, earlier on, but managing that expectation. So whatever number you land on, because you've done some calculations around what you do need and in terms of what you're going to get from your suppliers, you just need to make sure that actually you've managed those expectations with your customers in the right way. So when you can start to get that picture that actually the demand is hitting, it's actually coming out and managing those conversations with those customers as quickly as possible, so that they don't feel like you're not delivering on what you've said you would.
Well, we have a very different problem in the software industry because you only have one product. So it costs you an awful lot of money to get to the point where you're saleable. So we've currently spent a fair few tens of thousands to get to where we are now for our MVP, and it's going to cost us a few $100,000 to get us to the next stage. So there comes a point when you have an MVP as to when you start the marketing push, because an MVP in itself is saleable, but it's not the real deal, as it were. So you've got to have a product map, which is why I said it's at the start it's quite boring, but you have to start with a business plan. So your business plan or business strategy diagram are probably better, more useful. So you have an idea of how your company functions and where you need to build the resource. So amplifying what Chris was saying earlier, skilled resource is very hard to get. And so we ended up going to India to get our software written first MVP. And then we realised that the MVP wasn't as good as it could have been. So we ended up using another supplier in India, and because of staff turnover problems in India, so it's not a skill resource problem there, it's a staff turnover problem there. And so we ended up having to buy the company to secure the resource. So it's a crazy old world. But each product or service product has its own particular foibles. So ours isn't filling shelves, it's filling somebody's virtual space on their machines with our product.
When it comes to kind of creating those kind of very rigorous business plans, obviously a lot of times with smaller companies, especially tech-driven, the CEO and the main employees will be more tech-driven. I don't know if this is true of you, Chris, not necessarily business-driven in terms of how their kind of skill sets and work. So if you don't necessarily have the budget to, hire a business strategist off the bat, that can be we often hear that's quite a difficulty. People are kind of, they have the product that they're really proud of and they want to get that out into the market, but they don't really have the expertise to kind of navigate that kind of side of things. So what can people do to mitigate that, to kind of make sure you do have a sound business plan, even if it's something that might be outside of your comfort zone?
We talk with the MVP about resource planning at quite an early stage. So what we often do is get the entrepreneurs to map out their journey. So that will include, your product and your service and what you expect to achieve, say, over a 6 month, 9 month, year period. We then get them to map out underneath that what's the infrastructure, what support are you going to need. We'll then get them to map out, okay, what your marketing push, when does that start? When does it start pre-launch? What do you need, during it? What do you need after it? And then we'll also get them to map out the people that they need, so the resource behind it. So it's about actually understanding what you might need. And then in terms of having to be lean about what you do need, you can then start to work out, okay, so you can't hire someone at that expertise, but can you outsource some of that? What can you lean on people that can some of it be done by an intern? Possibly not, but possibly. So you then start to look at, okay, how can you be as lean as you possibly can through that MVP period?
With our business plan, it was more about saying, so in the early days, I'd write a business plan, but typically, so we've gone through various rounds of equity and funding, and also a business angel fund was the first one we did in 2014. And when you first write a business plan, you're doing it because you want the funding, and you're being told, where's your business plan? And as an entrepreneur, I run my business for a while, and so I had various aspects of things that I knew I managed myself in terms of understanding what I wanted to see from a financial point of view, whatever else. But actually, to put it into a business plan, and you start by Googling all this stuff and saying, what goes in a good business plan sort of thing, and trying to understand it. What's changed since then is it's a couple of things. First of all, we talk to as many people as possible. LinkedIn is great and it's free. There's lots of people that have done this before, even sat around this table. All that experience is out there, and pretty much most of the time people are prepared to talk to you about it and help you out. Local bank, talking to those guys about the financial side of things, more than helpful to tell you about, what does your balance sheet, your cash flow, P&L need to look like before you even start talking to anyone else about it. But what the big change for me was, I used to do it for other people, and now I do it for me. And so the business plan, we keep it live actually and keep it up to date. And as for tech people, when you're building a product, you want the best people you can find that can build products or whatever you're doing at the time. And they might be really good at that, but they're not going to be good at some of the other stuff. And because you have to flip from product development to manufacturing to whatever you're doing in the business ops, it's hard to say to that person that might be an incredible electric designer, can you please just do us a favour and help me to figure this stuff out for the business plan? But I think by getting your staff involved and by getting the guys involved, and also I keep harping on about our massive impact statement, we all believe in what we're trying to achieve. We're all on the same journey, and I don't think any member of staff that we've had over the last couple of years that doesn't want to be part of that journey is still around, in as much as they're not just doing their job 9 to 5. We're all committed to delivering what we want to deliver as part of that, and so we all contribute to that business plan. I think that helps really well, because you're not going to know it all. I've got so much to learn, tons of stuff to learn, even about what we're doing now, and so I regularly tap up someone and go, coffee, can I just want to talk about this before we do this on a manufacturing point of view, or biz dev, or whatever it might be. There's a wealth of advice out there.
The peer-to-peer support that we get on our programs, that's the magic. So when
Really
I talk
is.
to the entrepreneurs about the biggest impact, yes, we can share business tools, but actually it's a collaboration, and it's the peer-to-peer support that makes a massive difference.
I hear a lot of people that we call ourselves entrepreneurs, they say entrepreneurs, business owners, living the dream on that journey, that, knowing you're going to make a mistake. It's always talked about, you're going to make a mistake, but dust it off, learn from it, crack on. Absolutely true. But speaking to people who have made those mistakes before and listening to them, it's not like when you're growing up and your parents are saying to you, if you do that, you're going to hurt yourself, whatever. And you go, yeah, whatever, and you go and do it and figure it out. Truly in business, listen to someone says, yeah, I did that. We ordered that many units. It was a big mistake. Have you checked this? Have you looked into the terms that you're getting with that supplier? Oh, great. Great heads up. Be humble, take it on board. Sometimes, rarely, it doesn't lead to anything, but what's the harm in having the conversation if you want to truly succeed at it?
I'll really emphasise that, actually. You've made a fantastic point. You can never stop learning, and you've got to keep a really open attitude. And what Natasha's saying about the peer-to-peer advice that you get as well, you have to listen to people. They've all had lots of different and varied experiences, rich experiences, and you just got to keep your eyes and ears open, because you can always learn. And I think if you too arrogant to think that you could never learn, then you're going to go out of business. So, going back to the boring plans, so Chris was highlighting a couple of things. So having your business plan is one thing. So what the model of your business, how it will go. You need a marketing plan, you need a sales plan, you need a cost plan, resources and finance plan. Lots of plans. And but again, what I can't reiterate enough, what Chris was saying, you've got to keep those plans up to date. So you've got to keep revisiting them. And at the start of the week, we have a board meeting on every Monday morning, and we go through it and go, right, okay, are we still doing what we said we were going to do? And that's really important, because when you, like now we're having to go out for external investment, we've got to say to our investors, well, this is what we're going to do, and this is how much it's going to cost, and this is how much resource it's going to use, and these are how many products, so these are how many people we're going to sell to within this period of time, and you need to be able to model that properly as well. So it all sounds quite boring when I say it like that, but it's hard work. It is hard work.
And that listening, actually, it's not just the peer-to-peer, but the customer, listening to the customers. So there's a lot of work, effort, time that goes into launching a product, but actually it's the after you've launched the product, the feedback that you're getting from the customers. So one of the things, there's a lot of momentum and drive in launching that product, but it's actually, that's the start of the journey. The next bit is making sure that actually it is what your customers need, it is addressing a challenge that they've got, and it continues to do that.
Yeah, I think that customer service kind of thing where you can open yourself up, especially. So we've got an online feedback form and an email, and it's an open door thing. So if we get a response back, I may well handle it, or it could be someone else that deals with it in the business. But it's not just this is the only person that deals with it. It's open up, so we can get the best feedback then. But also social marketing and social networks, so Twitter, Facebook, etc. We say to people, get in touch. We're happy to help. And I think you open yourself up there. A lot of people are scared of it, because if you do something wrong, it's all over social marketing. But we've never been judged on how well we do things. Not really. I try to get the board to go, well done, you're a rock star. But the truth of it is, it's when you do something wrong and how you deal with that problem is how you improve. So with our new product range, we launched it quickly, went through typically things like in the instruction book, that it doesn't matter how many times everyone in the business will read through the instruction book and build one of the robots, there's still something you miss, and the customers find it within a couple of days of the product going out. They say, we found this bit here. So regardless of whether, for instance with the cardboard kits, every kit that goes out the door goes underneath a camera, so we know what's in the box, and we know that everything's in the box because of our QA process, which has formed from making mistakes over the years. So we've had an inquiry through from a guy in the Netherlands that had bought a kit and said, motion sensor's not in the box. So we said, okay, have you got the box number? And they open it up, there it is, have a look at the box. Lo and behold, motion sensor sat there in the box. So either he's lost it, or it's dropped out, or he can't find it. We said, no problem, sorry about that, motion sensor's on its way, it should be by you next day. So regardless, we know that we're okay, we've checked it and it was in the box, but as far as we're concerned, it doesn't matter. The customer's lost it for whatever reason, we get it out the door. And I think that, and that's a good example, because we were in the right in that instance. But we wouldn't ever harp on about that to the customer and go, well, no, it's in there, we've seen it. You don't do that. You have to make sure that you learn from, make sure that it is, and just send it straight out. Customer's always right. And actually, the guy came back and gave us some really good activities in Dutch for us to use with other people. So it was a real result, and that does tend to happen as well. If you can handle the customer service, the inbound feedback, it's very rewarding.
And the thing is as well, you have to, as part of the incorporation of your business, you have to have some idea of what you stand for. And so if you give a guarantee, you have to honour that guarantee. So if you say we'll give a 100% guarantee, whatever the 100% guarantee means, then you give that. So for us, 100% guarantee means that if something didn't function as the customer wanted in the month that they bought it, then we'll give them another month free. And if it continues like that, they don't pay us until it is right. So when we launched our MVP, we kept getting a number of glitches, usually software problems that we tested. And like Chris was saying, it's similar in the software world. You can test something to death, and then you realise that you've got a different thought process from your customers, and your customers will find it straight away without too much effort. So you have to honour on your guarantee and say, look, we're really sorry. We'll put that right. There's nothing to pay for. Keep using it, and that's worked very, very well.
With your software, are you because it is expensive to get that first product out and then go from there, do you do any kind of beta trials so you can get feedback from the market?
Well, at the moment, all our customers are beta testers because they're not paying us.
So
they're all beta testers.
That seems to be it works quite well, doesn't it, as software as a service at the moment from a market where you're giving it out to them as a beta, and the deal is you're not paying for it with cash, but we need the feedback.
Exactly right. That's exactly right. And the feedback has been great, actually.
Yeah.
People are usually very honest with the feedback that they give, and they're very forthright with their feedback. But that's fine. And we've not made any serious faults, so it's not like sort of taking something on the chin or anything like that. It's nothing is ever as bad as that. Yeah. But it'd be slight spelling mistakes in pop-up windows, or something's not clear in a pop-up window and things like that. And it's all great feedback.
Yeah. And that model seems to be working quite well now, where you can get out to the market and say it's a beta version. I think loads of people have done that now, and you're able to test it out. But also, I like the zero model. We use Zero for all of our account stuff, and that you can also kind of apply and say, market-driven development. If enough people say, "Can we have this?" and they go, "Yeah, sure, we'll develop that," because it's adding value to the product, and it works really well.
Yeah, we do exactly that as well.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
Yep.
And when it does come to distributing a product, particularly globally, obviously, what kind of challenges does that throw up in terms of actually physically getting a large volume of product out there, kind of in sort of different corners of the world?
It's the scariest thing in the world, to be fair. Going from selling direct and doing a couple of 100 units a week or whatever to doing large volume orders, and especially that first order, you're working with distributors that tend to say, if we don't sell it, we're going to give it back, and we've got a set period to do it. And in the same way, when you think of a distributor, you can't think, or big reseller, right, we're going to give you this much product and then we're going to go and get the next person, because it doesn't work like that. You have to you're not selling directly, but you're selling through them, so you have to start talking to their customers and work them as well. Just being able to deliver a large volume order, we got a couple of biggies this year, and it's funny because in the early days, looking back at pictures with one of my business partners, and we kind of bottle of champagne on a couple of units that we get, and we're like, that was amazing, and if we look back now and you see some of the smaller orders which were amazing, we're like, no, we want the next thing, always driving forwards. But with each big kind of hit that you get, is those additional challenges of how many units am I have to get, who's going to supply it, and these problems happen all the time. So at the moment in the world, there's a shortage of silicon, so getting boards and electric boards built, there's a real problem with getting those made, in terms of you just can't get hold of the components, so the lead times are much longer, and trying to strategize around that. You're trying to build a market, you've got someone else that is going to believe in the product and what you say, and is also going to buy into that and start to sell to that market, but then you turn around and go, oh, actually it's going to be 6 months before I can give you another lot. How do you kind of pace yourself and work with them so that they can deliver it and you can deliver it to the market, and keep that buzz going to build the business around all these challenges that happen. So again, it's just a bigger business plan, trying to concentrate on all of those bits that go around, and communicating with the distributors and resellers as though they're a part of your own business, if you like.
And how did you go out and actually find those distributors and suppliers and build those relationships? Yeah,
so a lot of it, the first instance, we spent a lot of time on our database, customers, resellers, all these different people. We had some people that we wanted as key partners that we wanted to work with, and it's a matter of making sure that you've got to work with them, court them, and obviously you've got to also concentrate at the same time. You've got to be selling. It takes a long time to get into these guys. You can't just stop and get in, or at least we couldn't as a business. We had to continue to sell alongside and concentrate on that, and it's shuffling up your time to say, I want to focus on going after the big distributors, work with the resellers to be able to get out into the world and build the business, as well as at the same time keeping that cash flow going, because month by month you still need the cash to pay the wages to keep talking to the distributors. So it's really again, speaking to people that we work with, advisors, colleagues, and saying, what's the best way to do it, and then just getting out there and having those chats, having those conversations.
And again, different in the software business. So what you tend to do in software, you can sell direct, but other very effective ways of selling are through white label partners. So you reskin your products for someone else to sell. So it'd be like you selling your stuff to Nintendo to sell for you. Or you can go into what are called digital marketplaces. So if you think about something, we're heading towards small businesses, so you have to think like a small business, and what do all small businesses need? So 90% of the time they need an accountant, they need a bank, these sorts of things. So you start thinking, well, how do we get ourselves in front of the client when they make these important decisions like choosing an accountant or choosing an accounting package, or does their accountant recommend an accounting package? Can you build an API into that, and all these sorts of things? So you have to try and think of the behaviour of your customer. And the same is exactly true when you're looking at very large businesses. So if you're trying to get into a very large business, you have to think about, well, where will my product fit within the business model of that company? And what value will it bring to that party? So different, but these are just different things that you have to think when you're selling your product.
That's a good point. We looked at the customers that we chose, and we set out to try and get at least two. We've got two really good distributors, one US, one UK, although they provide to the rest of the world. That's where they're based, and looking at what their goals are, what are they trying to achieve, and where do we fit in with that? Even though we might be one SKU of a million SKUs, where do we fit in with what they're trying to achieve? Their goals might be slightly different. Even though we're adding a value, where are we adding that value and kind of helping to push towards a success for them? So their success becomes our success in effect.
And actually, interestingly, on the where you are now, we find we talk to a lot of entrepreneurs at the start of their journey who we know are going to scale, and we're confident that with support, with listening and feedback that they're going to make it. And we often talk to them about their own branding. So at the start, if they know they're going to go global, actually, is the brand that you're portraying now, is what you've chosen to be your brand now going to actually be relevant when you do break the US, or when you do break into China, or wherever that might be? So we definitely get the entrepreneurs to think, to plan with a destination in mind.
That's a really good point. We with CBIS, we had in the old days, CBIS database, CBIS websites, and things like that. So when we went into education, we just did CBIS education as another string to the bow. But actually, when we realised how big this could be and that what we were doing was having some real positive impact, we wish we'd come up with a really cool, groovy name, something. And so when we launched into retail, it was Barneybots. I mean, the name of the robots, the cardboard robots in schools, is actually consumable robotics, because they're consumables. And that doesn't sound as cool as Barneybots. Barneybots seems to work quite nicely. So that's a really good point. But I think what you're going to be doing with talking to some of the bigger guys, the distributors and stuff, is going to be invaluable, because it's, as a business owner, I don't really want to grow slowly, organically. I don't want to grow over the next 20 years. I've got big plans. That's part of my makeup. I want to do it really, really quickly, and I want to do it right, but I want to rule the world. That's what we do, isn't it? So, but realising that you go into a distributor and they're going to want large numbers, they're going to have clauses that you've never experienced before. They're going to want stuff delivered at a set time. Being able to get in and talk to those people without them taking advantage when it comes to deal time, crucial. I think for any small business that would be great.
And another issue that's obviously going to come up when you are selling globally is that different countries have different legal restrictions and legal requirements. So what are some of the key kind of legal things that you guys have needed to think about, or you advise people to think about when they're taking a product globally to the market?
I think it's one that applies to the retail sector from the education sector initially, which is CE marking. Any robots that we were building for schools were considered development kits, so you don't have to certify them. And even though CE marking is a self-certification to say this is something that is safe, and you've gone through all the testing behind it, it's an expensive process. And you need people to help and do certain tests that you just can't do yourself. I don't have a giant room back at the workshop with a static wall that can tell me whether or not static jumps from one component to the next, for instance. So in the UK, and toy safety is crucial. Obviously, we don't want to build something that's dangerous, but us just saying it's safe, we've poked it around, is one thing. Actually getting it certified is another. Then when you go to the US, you're going from a CE mark into an FCC. And the toy standards are different, completely different. So, with our cardboard boxes, which are the packaging that the kit comes in, what if someone chews that? Why would you chew that? But that's not the point. If someone decided to chew the box, the ink had a certain kind of ink, and next thing you know, someone decides to, pop the clogs, we're liable for that. So understanding the things around safety, certification, even websites, trying to say that we've got a UK and our website address is .co.uk, because we weren't proactively chasing the US market, but it's worth thinking about in the early days of your business and your brand name. just grab those names, because if you're serious about really going out into the world and doing this, you want to keep it aside. So we've gone .tech now, so it's Barneybots.tech, because that's quite nice. That covers the rest of the world, because otherwise you've got to go .com and the next one, the next one, the next one. So trying to make yourself global from the outside and thinking bigger picture doesn't have to be very expensive. I'm not talking about throwing tens of thousands of pounds into starting a business and being right, so I've just started, this is what I want to do, and I'm going to quickly grab the US domain name and the Chinese domain name. But just think around where you headed and be a bit more strategic about it.
I would say this because I'm an ex-lawyer, but actually when you are entering into contracts, it's really important to get that legal advice. If there's one thing that you are going to invest your resource in, it is actually making sure that you've got very clear guidance and terms. And often what you might find is if their contracts are governed by US law, the same things don't apply. So it's just being really, really careful that you do get advice from the professionals when you need it on certain things, and that's one of them.
Absolutely. Totally agree with what Natasha's saying there. Get the advice, it's cheaper in the long run. And the other thing as well, like in our market where we are selling a product that actually helps people enforce law, even though GDPR is European wide, each country in Europe had what's called a period of derogation, which is a fancy way of saying they could do little subtle changes to the overall original act to suit their own market foibles. So our market is a global market, but it's a global market that we have to make sure that every single country we sell to, that we're actually adhering with their version of the law, even though it's now becoming very much a global law. So like in the financial services market, you had what's called Sarbanes-Oxley, which affected the US insurance industries. But within a few months of it being enacted, it very quickly became global law. And GDPR has become almost a global de facto standard in a very few months, because any country that trades with Europe must enforce GDPR on their customer data.
What, for you guys, would you say are the most important investments, if you are working with a limited sum of money to invest into a product launch? What would you say are the most important investments that you would make at that early stage of launching a product?
Yeah, I would say getting out there in the market and testing out. Don't just think that your product's the best thing since sliced bread without getting out there and trying it first, because if it's wrong and you've launched it, it's really hard to backtrack. It's expensive to backtrack. So the beta tests, the trials, getting out there and doing workshops, it costs time and money, but it's well worth its weight in gold to get out there and try it, I think. And it also helps with things like the packaging and stuff like that. If it's a product, or the design and the user interface, if it's software, that feedback is worth the investment, definitely.
Going back to the legal thing, so if you've got a technical product, there are two things you really need to do. So if you're choosing a funky name for your company, then you have to check that somebody else hasn't already used that funky name. And when we got the company in India, we tried any number of permutations of names, and they've already been thought of. So in the end, we just chose something that was completely and utterly innocuous. We weren't allowed to use the word compliance in India, because that was reserved for government agencies. So we couldn't use our name in India. So there's things like that. Domain names, again, not difficult to do, but just do your searching, make sure that somebody hasn't already chosen the domain. Again, going from what Chris was saying, if you recognise it's a global market, choose a global name. And also, if you are trying for a funky name, make sure it's not a swear word in somebody's language. And then regards to other things, if it's a technical product, you have to be able to protect your IP. So again, sometimes patent lawyers are very useful for this sort of thing. And if you have IP that's not patentable, you have to protect yourself. So there are little tricks you can do, like mail your software to yourself. So you've got a postage date on it, on a package. So if somebody comes up with a similar looking product, you can say, well, I created this product on this date, and you've got a package that can prove that you created it on that date. So little things like that don't cost very much, but you have to think ahead, because there are unscrupulous people out there in the marketplace. There really are. With my wife's business, we trademarked her business, but trouble is when you trademark something, the trademarks come up on the website to say that you've trademarked something. So my wife's trademark was stolen by a US government agency, and then somebody else because we'd only trademarked it in the UK, somebody in Poland stole our trademark, somebody in Hungary stole our trademark. So, it's very difficult. You've got to think ahead. Not everybody's very nice in that world, so you have to think ahead and protect yourself.
So I would say test thoroughly, protect your IP, but also just if you have other shareholders, if you have co-founders, it's actually making sure that they will be going on your journey with you, but actually things do change. So what we do talk to entrepreneurs about is actually making sure that you have a proper shareholders agreement in place to govern your relationship as you go through. So that's definitely something that I would say, make sure that you have that in place. And
we'll end on a positive note. So once you've been through all of these processes, hopefully, what does a successful product launch look like to you? What do you define as success when you go into a new product launch?
I think the fact that it's selling like hotcakes is really good. It's a real result globally. For us, seeing it in media and stuff where other people are talking about it is a real result. Look at what I've done with this, product, and we didn't even know they'd got the thing. So that's quite nice. But I just think everyone's buying. You feel happy, and everyone in the business is happy that we're doing the right thing. It feels right. And actually, it's funny because it's been going on for a few years. All these things. It looks like we've crafted this strategy from day one, and we planned it. It's fallen into place as we've learned and dealt with things as they've come up. We've had an idea of where we wanted to be. We've pivoted, and it just looks like a masterclass. And I would say to people, that's great. We feel that off the back of that, we're succeeding, and hopefully it will continue. But don't be afraid to talk to people. You don't have to do this on your own. This is one of those great things about running a business, is there's a wealth of people that will be prepared to help you out there.
With software, break even. That is your success point. So when you've broken even and you can pay off some of your investors, then you're happy. But even then, you've still got to hit your resource targets, your cost targets, all these sorts of targets which you've set. You still must meet them. But success the first success is break even, and that can be a few years down the line, which sounds bonkers, but it's just the way of the world. Just to go on another positive note, so I was saying that, watch out, there are a lot of shysters out there who will rip off your product, all that sort of stuff. But there are, as Natasha was saying earlier about peers, there are an amazing number of people who will help you out along the way. So Chris is right, never be afraid to ask, never be afraid to learn. And I think the other big thing really with all of that, I read a great book years ago called Gung Ho. One of the concepts within the book was what it called big pie people and small pie people. Small pie people are people who think that the pie is only a finite size and they'll hang on to everything. And then big pie people are people who say, well, the pie's that big, we can't take it all ourselves, we have to share it. So if you have that big pie mentality, you'll succeed.
Thanks very much, guys. It's been a really interesting discussion. This has been the latest edition of the Business of Engineering podcast. You can find us at element14.com. We are the official online community for Premier Farnell. It is the world's largest online community for engineers, makers and electronics professionals. We have over 500,000 registered members around the world. So do check us out, and please hit subscribe for a new episode every month. And if any of our listeners want to get in touch with you guys or learn more about your companies, how can they find you, Chris?
Just go to barneybots.tech and have a look there. There's contact details, and also have a look at some of the products that we've got.
In a similar vein, compliancecompendium.co.uk. You'll find out a little bit about what we do. And if you want to contact me, just put Gareth in front of that, and that's fine. Thank you.
And it's the NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerators. So if you want to get in contact with us, please do. If you're interested in coming on our programs, we've got 12 locations across the UK. And we also have an offering for startups, but NatWest Entrepreneur Accelerator.
Thanks very much, and we'll see you next time. Goodbye.